Hey, everybody out there in our virtual wonderland. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers with the Decibel Music Film Festival here in San Francisco. One of the things I really enjoy about programming a film festival like this is that you get to discover, stories from around the world, and then occasionally some kind of hidden gems of stories here in our own country. And with that said, you just saw the really wonderful film. I really get into it, and we're lucky enough to have director Brian Bieber here. Brian, thanks for joining us for this Q&A.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Um, so one of the things I think people often are curious about, just given how long it takes to kind of make documentaries and things, is like, at what point in time did you realize that this was the story that you had to tell?
Well, I kind of stumbled into it. The project started as a website where I was digitizing old like 7 inches and demos that I was digging up from our scene. Because it was that like mid to early mid, even like late '90s, just like pre-internet time where basically the only record of scenes from those times are stacked in people's closets somewhere or in their parents' attics. And so I started reaching out to people and letting them know I was doing it. And then in the process I was having all these great conversations with people and catching up and realizing that so many of the people that came out of our scene went on to do really interesting things. And I think initially I've said this before, but I thought like, oh, you know what I should do? I should put together like an oral history and I'll put out a book. And then I remembered after putting out a book myself a few years ago already, like, oh yeah, people don't really read books very much. And so I said, well, what if I made a movie? And then I think before I realized what that was going to entail, it was too late to turn back.
Well, I'm glad that you decided to kind of follow the muse. As you started kind of jumping into to the film, I mean, did you know, like, did you have a list of like people that you knew you wanted to talk to, or like archival material, or was it one of those things where was it like a leap of faith where you're like, look, if I start doing this and I start kind of talking about it, it'll kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, like you would just kind of, was it a process of discovery, or did you kind of know the avenues you wanted to take?
Well, there were a couple things. This will be playing after the movie, right?
Yes,
So
yeah.
okay.
So you can do spoilers.
Okay, so Terry Taylor, who is kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, kind of the protagonist of the documentary. He was sort of the guy who, when he was 15, started booking shows in our town. People had done it before him, but he started doing. He was the one who did it really consistently and really built up a great reputation. And so I knew like Terry was going to have to be the guy that I talked to. And I think once I realized that a few years ago, Dan and Liz Nissen, who are a couple of kids from the scene from years ago, they opened up a record store and music venue, all ages music venue in our town, and kind of revived the all ages scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that I would have an ending, because I didn't want it to just be a nostalgia piece. That was the other thing. So I didn't want it to just be a like, oh, look how great things used to be when, in the old days. And so I wanted to make sure that, that it was really just about ideas more than a specific set of kids making stuff. And that, the magic comes from, I think, kids, no matter whether it's 1985, 1995, or 2020. I think kids are they're always going to be the ones that make special stuff. And so I knew I had an ending, and so I just kind of went from there. And basically, so there's a handful of people like Terry I needed to talk to, Dan and Liz. And then invariably, I think I interviewed 40 some people for the documentary. And no matter who I talked to, they always said, oh, have you talked to so-and-so yet? Have you talked to so-and-so? You need to talk to so-and-so. And I mean, if I had followed up on all of those, I would be making this for years. Like it would never end because everyone, I mean, and it doesn't matter what scene you're from, like everyone has, their lives were changed by it. Like if you came up in a scene, then it changes you. The people that stick around in those are the ones that they're going to take it with them wherever they go. And so at a certain point I just had to stop and say, well, I know that I know that these other half dozen people that you can name off the top of your head would have great stories, but yeah, I wanted to finish it too. So
Yeah, yeah. Always the conundrum with it. You know, like where does the story end? At least you had the ending when you started the film. So
yeah, so that kind of
we'll,
helped.
um, as you got a chance to kind of screen the film around a little bit, and know the last year's been a little bit weird with the pandemic thing.
Yeah.
Is like when kind of like younger people see the film, what's some of the kind of reactions that you've gotten, and also, do you think like a movie like this might inspire, I guess, even similar scenes, nowadays?
Well, I mean, I would love it if it inspired other scenes. You know, we did a screening in this place called the Cave Collective in Rapid City, South Dakota, which is on the other side of the state.
Uh,
And that was kind of like the Rapid City was kind of the sister scene to Sioux Falls. You know how those go, like where the
yeah.
promoters were in touch, um, and so we did a screening there, which was really cool because it was all Cave Collective is doing incredible stuff where it's beyond a venue where they're doing it's a whole community space there. They have workshops and they really really cool stuff,
Hmm.
mentoring programs. So they're doing really really neat stuff. And so we screened the movie there, and I mean that was the first time that I was in a room full of mostly teenagers,
Hmm.
and I was shocked and delighted that it held their attention and that they that they thought it was cool. I think you get to I would expect, I'm in my 40s now, and like most of the people that I interviewed were all in our like late 30s, early 40s, and you kind of expect. I think Sean Cook even says in it like kids don't really care about what I'm doing now, and I sort of felt that way too, where it's like I hope you guys like this, and but I just sort of assume younger people are not interested. They're doing stuff cooler than what I'm doing. So so yeah, so I've been pleased with that. The young people that the handful of young people that I've talked to about it seem to enjoy it.
And during the making of the film, were there any like surprises that you learned about, or that liked, or also was there any stories that like didn't make it to the final film, but I think are just kind of interesting to share?
Yeah, there was one story that Terry told about when he was doing a house show, and he was I think like 16 years old, and how house shows are. There's like they're just in someone's basement and they're in like a rec room off of some spare bedroom, and there's a pit. They're doing a circle pit in some person's basement, and Terry finds a toy gun on the floor, and so like in the middle of this pit, and so he picks it up and he's like waving this toy gun around, and he's like, "Oh, look at me!" And he goes to his friend, he's like, "Look at this toy gun I found," and it turned out it was a real gun. Someone had dropped a gun in the pit, and so so Terry like unknowingly was waving
Oh
this
man.
loaded gun around in a pit in someone's house, and so then he went off and stashed it in this spare bedroom and chewed out this huge dude that came looking for his gun later in the show. you know so that was quite a story. And I had one animated segment in there because to for a story that obviously we didn't have B-roll for, and I was that was kind of before that was cut. I was gonna animate that as well,
Mm,
but yeah. So just that and that's the other thing too, is like everyone has stories, and so you could just have an entire documentary about people reminiscing. And so I tried to. So whenever someone told a story and that made it into the movie, I wanted to make sure um, that it wasn't just a fun story, but that it kind of related to the themes, that we
yeah.
were going for. So
No, it turned out really cool. It was one of those ones where um, it's a story, kind of a story that you wouldn't even know existed,
mm.
and so really appreciative for filmmakers like you to kind of go and uncover these gems and then kind of create a film around to be able to share it with us.
Mm.
What like what's life like now for teens in the city, if you
Well,
know?
I think yeah, I guess I don't know. I can't speak for teenagers right now,
Or word on the street?
but yeah, from what I see from this process and like talking to them, like I see kids in Sioux Falls doing a lot of cool stuff now, and it's And the really cool part is that it's not the same cool stuff that we were doing, when we were kids. It isn't just it isn't just being in bands, or there are plenty of bands now, but there's also just, I think, kind of the variety of music is a lot different.
Mhm.
It isn't just a bunch of 3 chord bands anymore. It's almost embarrassing how much better they are as musicians these days, and I don't know how that happened. um, but just like the zines that people are like making zines. I know that there's people doing like web comics and stuff, and I just think that there's um yeah, and I think what Dan and Liz found is that even though there wasn't much of an all ages scene in Sioux Falls for quite a few years, when they provided a space for kids to do their thing, then kids will do their thing. And so it's almost like I was gonna say it's almost like lifting up a rock and exposing like what kids are doing, but it's the opposite of that. It's like pulling back a curtain, and all of a sudden, and they're doing, and you realize like, oh, there's of course these smart and creative kids have been here the whole time, and it's just
Right.
giving them a place to do it, to put a spotlight on them.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Before we wrap things up, like, what's the kind of next steps for the film? And like, I always say to our viewers is like, we're the street level marketing, folks. Like, we've had the opportunity for filmmakers to share their films with us, and so now we get a chance to, I always say, like, if you like the movie, like, go, tweet about it, social media,
Yeah.
just like tell people about it. But like, yeah, how can people continue to follow the film or even kind of do a deeper dive online?
Yeah, well, we're on Facebook and Instagram, both just at I really get into it, and we've got a couple more festivals coming up before the end of the year, and then so right now we have a physical release out. We have a DVD that you can order the DVD at ireallygetintoit.com, and there's some other merch there as well. That was also kind of the backwards effect of COVID. We weren't able to do a screening, so we did to start off. So we just did a home release. And then in early 2022 we'll be doing a digital release. So we'll do once we're done with festivals, then we'll do digital rental and purchase. So you can look for that, and if they follow us on socials, then we can find out there.
Nice. Well, thanks again, Brian, and everybody go and follow. I really get into it on Facebook and Instagram, and let the filmmaker know how you felt about the film, and just really glad you shared it with us.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Let's definitely take care.
You too.